but we're still quite some far away from any ideal GST because there's still a lot of complexity in the system. There's a bit of irony in all this because if you believe the official numbers, India is growing at 8%. The economy doesn't need any boost because if you're growing at 8%, this is the world's best economy by far. I want to ask you, if you go to the common man and say we're in a miracle economy, how many will actually agree with this? I was pro-GST, I'm pro-GST today. What I think has changed between then and now is this spirit of cooperative federalism.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jash Srinivas, and along with me is our editor-in-chief, Mr. S. Srinivasan. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had announced tax breaks on a barrage of goods in an attempt to spur consumption. But will this really spur consumption? Joining us to decode, Mr. Arvind Subramanian, former Chief Economic Advisor. Sir, thank you very much indeed. Sir, let me begin with you there. India had 4 rates during the very introduction to GST. Right now, these have been collapsed into 2 slabs right now. How close are we to the very idea of an ideal GST that the founding team, including you and Mr. Jaitley, had envisioned?
Firstly, I think it's a little bit misleading to call it a 2-slab GST. Because even before these reforms were done, we'll come to that in a second, excellent reforms, we wrote a piece in the Business Standard which shows there are about 45 slabs actually, if you include the cesses and things. So it's actually a very complicated system. And then there are also all kinds of duty inversions, no ITC, and all this pizza, papadam, all this, if it's salted, it's something, it's sweet, it's something. Then you have, end-use based classification. So there's a lot of complexity. And what this does is it eliminates the 28% slab, which is an excellent reform. When I wrote the report, I said there should be nothing more than 18. So we've gone back to that. So that's very good. They've also taken many items or eliminated the 12 slab. So those 2 slabs have been eliminated. And I think some of the cess items have been brought to 40%. So there's some simplification that has taken place. The rate cuts have happened. But so I would say we have moved one step closer to a good and simple tax. But we're still quite some far away from any ideal GST because there's still a lot of complexity in the system. Of course, there's the whole question of enforcement and things which we can talk about later. But it's a very desirable and excellent step in which has involved mostly rate cuts, and some simplification.
Yeah, Mr. Subramanian, I do agree with you that, but even now there are about 5 rates. Basically, there is 0 rate, 3% for gold, 5% for, like a standard one. Then there is, the other one is 12%. And then, of course, you have, the 40%. So even now there are 5. And like you said, there are other exemption, other things.
Not exemptions. There are many other rates. On position, there are 3 rates. In the case of restaurants, you have 5% without ITC, 18% with ITC. So the list goes on. So there are still, a number of, and even now, although some of the cess goods have been brought to 40, there are still a lot of items on which there's still a cess, which are very complicated. Tobacco and especially tobacco, as you know, cigarettes and tobacco, there's still a lot of complexity. There are like at least probably another 10 more slabs or 10 more rates. So there's still a lot of complexity still. What is fair to say is that the majority of items will now be in either 0, 5, 18, 40. Majority. But, but still a lot of other rates as well.
And also the differing rates of the states, all of them have now been collapsed, right? Which you did in the previous 2017. Different states at different.
That's why it's a unified GST. All states, in principle, have the same rate on all goods, unlike earlier where they had their own different VAT rates. So relative to that, there's been a lot of simplification, no question.
Right. but you still feel a lot more needs to be done. This is what are we at an intermediate stage, or what percentage you would say if I have to,
That's tough to say, but we're certainly at an intermediate stage. We're not quite yet there, but this is an important move in that direction.
Right. Let me come to a main issue here. The objective of this exercise, which FM has been saying, is to kind of spur the economy by increasing consumption. The idea is that by lowering the rates, there will be more people buying goods, and therefore it will result in better consumption, and therefore better, tax mobilization, and therefore it will also help in kind of pick up in the economy. Uh, do you agree with this formulation?
See, I think you have to look at it two ways, right? You're cutting. This is a tax cut, okay, a consumption tax cut. Then the question is, will it revive or boost the economy, right? And then you have to say, will it boost the economy in the short run, in the sense of the cycle, whatever? And then will it boost it permanently? So these are two different questions. Now, there's a bit of irony in all this, because if you believe the official numbers, India is growing at 8%. Economy doesn't need any boost, because if you're growing at 8%, this is the world's best economy by far. No need for any boost. But of course, you can take a view on how many people think the economy is growing at 8%. So assuming that it's not growing, the economy does need some stimulus. Then yeah, tax cut. Remember, the boost to consumption will depend upon how much is the tax cut, how much will the prices come down by, and how will consumers respond. And a rule of thumb is that when you do a tax cut, supposing the cut is about half a percentage point of GDP, then GDP will grow by half a percentage point of GDP. So, if you have 7% growth, it may become 7.5. And these are all estimates, a little bit there, a little bit less, a little bit more, but it's not going to be huge. It'll be around the half percentage point, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. And that's kind of the in the short run. Is it going to boost permanently the economy? That's very unlikely, because the problems of the economy are much deeper. Private investment is weak. The risks of doing business are high. Now there's a Trump tariff shock, and we know that there are lots of structural impediments. So, in terms of permanent potential growth, this will probably have a marginal or a negligible impact. In the short run, there will be some small.
Right. So if I have to rephrase what you're saying is, you are saying it is not cyclical, which would have been a short-term thing. The economy is more structural. It requires more structural change. It is not just cyclical. But then there are economists. I would actually quote Swaminathan Iyer, who's actually accusing you of being pessimist. He says that you are not believing these numbers. You see, for instance, what he's saying is 2023, let me quote the figures, 9.5% September-December quarter. That after 3 quarters subsequently, the economy came down 8.4%, 6.5%, and 5.6%, 3 subsequent quarters. But then the next 3 quarters, it went up from 6.4% to 7.4% to 7.8%. He says, we are in the zone of miracle economy, which means 7% plus.
But I want to ask you, if you go to the common man and say we are in a miracle economy, how many will actually agree with this? See, firstly, I think to look at all these very short-term numbers is, I think, always you have to be careful. The point is that, even with the latest numbers, you don't have to, listen to me, what I have to say. Lots of people are questioning the numbers and, doubting. The point is that, does it feel like an economy that's growing at 7 or 8%?
Right.
And if you look at sales growth, for example, it's very weak. And a lot of these high frequency indicators are also not doing very strongly. So the question is not whether I'm optimistic or pessimistic, but let's look at the numbers over a broader period of time and see what's happening. See, it is true that after COVID, for 1 or 2 years, the economy did do well, it rebounded well, and so on. But look at private investment. It's been completely weak and stagnant for a long time. Look at Harish Damodaran's piece yesterday about how capital inflows have completely collapsed. FDI is weak. I don't want to get into a contest on which number is the right number, but it's just that I think that it seems that this is an economy that needs a lot of reform and boost via good policy measures.
Are you almost now? I mean, are you implying the data itself is not reliable? The data which is being dished out by the government of India is not reliable.
I don't want to get into a view now. It's, I've written on this extensively, and I think people should read that. It's just that, as you yourself said, the headline numbers have never really tallied with the constituents and with a variety of other indicators. And everyone knows there are two or three obvious, which I think the government itself has admitted. This double deflation problem is there. Inadequate deflators, and they're going to change all this going forward. So I would put it this way, that MOSPI is doing a commendable job in terms of future reform, how they're going to fix it in the future, and let's focus on that. And I think, meanwhile, I think we should focus on what is it that the economy needs by way of structural improvement, structural reform.
Okay. I want to get back to the GST conversation that we were having. So, a follow-up on that. The government had stated that there could be a revenue loss of about 48,000 crores, sticking to the FY25 consumption numbers. Do you think the spur in consumption, as the center anticipates, could likely offset this revenue loss? That's question number. That's the first part of the question. The second part of the question is, you said on the Economic Times this morning, along with Josh Philman, that there could be a loss of about 2 lakh crore, right? So, the government has tried to spur consumption through direct tax breaks. It's not the first time the government is trying to do. They did it back in the budget, and the Reserve Bank of India did by the cash reserve ratio, and and the urban demand hasn't picked up at all in response. If GST rate cuts don't generate the revenue buoyancy the center is counting on, is anticipating to do, as it put FY26 fiscal deficit target of 4.4% under risk, under threat.
See, I think there's a lot of confusion about the revenue loss numbers, right?
Okay.
Firstly, this is for this year. It's only 7-8 months of impact, right? Navaratri is whatever October, so maybe 6 to 8. Actually, 5 months of impact only. And I think when you assess the revenue loss, I think one has to be careful, because some estimates are just focusing on GST loss, right? But the correct calculation is what is going to be the loss of the GST and compensation cess put together. Okay. That we estimate on an annualized basis, i.e., not for this year, but over a full year, will be between 1.5-2 lakh crores. That's about whatever, half a percentage point of GDP. Now, so remember, the boost to consumption happens because there's a revenue loss, because you've cut taxes and prices are going to be cheaper for consumers. So I think at the end of the day, there's going to be about half a percentage point GDP loss for the aggregate kitty, GST and compensation put together. And so the budget target for this year, half of that, it will slip probably by about whatever. Now here's the tricky part, which I think that people are getting confused over. That today, neither the central government nor the state government gets any money from the compensation cess, because the revenue from the compensation cess is being used to repay loan that was taxed. So that's the sense in which people are saying that there will be no loss to the government also. So one has to be careful about what. I look at it in the aggregate. There is going to be, by definition, because you've cut taxes, the overall kitty is going to come down, and that will have implications for this year, but also more permanently for both the center and the states.
So there was some kind of reduction in GST rates even in 2019.
Yeah.
Uh,
Big cuts.
Big one.
Yeah. Just to give you a sense, the estimate is between pre-GST and even before these tax cuts, the effective GST rate has come down from about 15 and a half to 11 and a half already because of the and that is why if you look at the chart also in today's Economic Times,
Yeah.
we got about 6.1, 6.2 pre-GST. Today, before the tax cuts, that's 5.9 percent. So over the thing, we've lost revenue as a share of GDP precisely because of the tax cuts that you mentioned.
So you are saying that a lot of changes need to be done. Can you, for our viewers, list what is it in your list, the top 5 which you would like to do, the government should do immediately or in the medium term at least?
See, look, I think that this is the fundamental question is, why is private investment weak, right? See, I think the government has done a good job on public investment and building up a lot of infrastructure, and also the welfare, all the the goods and services that people are getting, like uh, cooking gas, electricity, all of these things, chula, which the Prime Minister did a very good job of providing to people. The social welfare state has improved broadly, but the heart of the question is, how is private investment going to improve, and why is it not picked up? If everyone is saying growth is 8%, 9%, why is private investment not picking up? That's the heart of the question. Now, look, in no economy is there one solution to any problem, because remember, India, not only central government but state governments have to take action as well. For example, in a previous piece we wrote, I think the electricity sector is needs a lot of reform, and that has to be done by state governments. If you look at electricity prices for manufacturing, they are double what they should be, and therefore our international competitiveness is being affected by the power sector and electricity sector, which state governments need to reform. Now, what does the central government need to do? It set up this deregulation commission, and I'm sure they'll come up with a lot of good recommendations. But I would try and bring a slightly different perspective on this. I think people are going to come up with a list of what needs to be done, the do list. I think there's a don't do list, which is even more important than the do list.
Mhm.
So Josh Feldman and I wrote a piece about a few months ago. We think that the biggest impediment to investment, private investment, is not the returns. The returns are quite good in India. I mean, if you look at, the corporate tax rate has been cut, the banking system is ready to provide credit, PLI scheme was done, all kinds of things were done to boost the return. But the fundamental problem is the risks of doing business in India are very, very high. And this is risks both to domestic and foreign, both, not just to foreign. So the question is, why? Why do people feel there are so many risks? And we identified 3 or 4. One is, some groups are favored over, investors in general, what we call national champion risk.
Yeah.
One. Second, very important, is that there's a lot of arbitrary enforcement, weaponization of enforcement, targeting, some people. Uh, the tax terrorism is still a problem, especially with the GST. Um, uh, so there's a lot of risk that's created. And the third thing, of course, is that we wrote about the economy became much more closed, because the government has been issuing, until recently, quality control orders, which have really affected the competitiveness of exports of India as well. So I think that uh, there are risks to doing business. Is the playing field level between all investors? One. Is the playing field level between states? I mean, are some
Right.
states favored more than other states?
Right.
So the risks of doing business in India are high, and that's what needs to be addressed. So, So I think the Deregulation Commission should consider all these things as well. In addition to, Inspector Raj, all of these things are very important. But also, what the don't do list is as important as the do list.
Okay, so we understood what you don't want the government to do, but I also want to ask you the inside story. Since you were with the founding team along with Mr. Jaitley, I was listening to your lecture last year at the Madras Institute of Developmental Studies, where you called the GST Arun Jaitley's breakfast. The former finance minister, Mr. P. Chidambaram, had said that these GST reforms are 8 years overdue. He said we are 8 years late, even though he sort of welcomed the reform the finance minister had put forth. You were at the forefront of crafting the GST along with Mr. Jaitley in 2017. Why couldn't India deliver a truly good and simple tax? That's number one. Were there any obstacle there? Was it political, or was it economic, or was it both? What's the inside story?
No, there's no inside story I've written about in my book. I think that, as you know, I wrote a report. I said there should only be three rates, just three
That's
rates.
right, yeah.
Yeah. And we couldn't achieve it, which was very unfortunate. I mean, not being able to achieve anything in India of policy is always political. But I think a combination of politics, and bureaucratic pressures led to that. I think it's not worthwhile rehearsing history. It's all there in my book. I would just say is that the political and the bureaucratic commitment to simplicity was not there at that point. That's the simple answer. Why it's not. We can go into that, but there was no commitment to that at that stage, because I think, to be fair, the concern was just to get this done, right? I mean, because many states were opposing it, so the compromises required to get it done somehow got the better of the commitment that was required to also think about design much more carefully. And then, because of that, it slipped, and we were what we are. But I think no point crying over spilt milk. We should be, we should commend the government for having at least done this now. And I think so we have to look forward, and hopefully, we'll get closer and closer to the ideal GST.
No, since we are federal, and we believe in telling a story, from the perspective of the states, it's very important for us to ask this question about the states. See, they have why when GST came up, I'm sure you went through a lot of negotiations, and then finally a guarantee was given of 14%, in the first 5 years, annual growth in revenue, and also sharing of revenue from services. Service tax, these are two important things which are done then. But now the states are also constantly feeling the squeeze of, since they have more or less given up their sovereignty on many areas of tax raising, possibilities. How do you see them going forward? Some of the states have already, the better ones like Kerala has protested, because they're also not just looking at GST, they're also combining other things like central assistance and other things. Like you pointed out, there is among states also, there is a certain disparity. What do you see going forward? What would be the, what should be the states looking at?
First of all, two or three things. One, because of the compensation guarantee that was given for the duration 5-6 years, the states did very well. The states got about, on average, I mean, also obviously the differences among states, which I don't want to get into too much, it gets complicated, but states as a whole did very well post GST. They got about 0.5 percentage point of GDP more than they were getting before. So the states during the compensation period did very well. And now, because the overall kitty is going to decline because of all these tax cuts, both the center and the states are going to suffer a revenue shortfall. I think that's point number one. Point number two, I think this is the bigger point, and I want to say this, is that the 2016, the original GST was done in a true spirit of cooperative federalism under Mr. Jaitley, in order to get the states on board, because as you know, many states, even Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, were not happy with the GST because they thought they would lose out from this. But so that's why, in the spirit of cooperative federalism, we got compensation, which the states benefited from. But now, if you're going to cut rates, your revenues, everyone's revenue is going to decline. So both the center and the states are equally culpable and complicit in reducing the size of the overall kitty. So let's under be no illusions about that. Both are responsible, and both are going to face the consequences. Point number two. Point number three is that I think what people don't recognize is or appreciate sufficiently is that cooperative federalism is determined by a broader sense of shared objectives and trust, above all, trust between the center and the states. This trust is not just about the GST. This trust is about what is happening more broadly. And I think certainly some of the richer states, the southern states, and some others as well, have felt that that spirit of cooperative federalism has not been the same. So in that context, therefore, to say what should we do, what should we not do, people forget that it's not about raising rates, cutting rates, whatever, all that you can do, but there has to be this broader spirit of cooperative federalism that will only that will allow this to go forward. So just to give you an example, I've been accused now of becoming anti-GST because I don't want petroleum in the GST, right? This is accusation that's being made. Now, I was pro-GST. I'm pro-GST today. What I think has changed between then and now is this spirit of cooperative federalism. Now, if this spirit of cooperative federalism is been vitiated, and we know what the reasons are, then to say, the states should give up more sovereignty, that becomes more difficult for some states to accept. So it's not a question of GST is bad. It's just that the overall atmosphere has changed. And as Keynes said, when the facts change, you have to change your opinions. You cannot have the same spirit. You cannot negotiate the GST in the same spirit as 2016-17. So I think it's that broader spirit of cooperative federalism that I think needs to be revived if you have to have more things going forward. That's the key point.
Okay, so as you spoke about cooperative federalism, and I think so. You mean to say that the time is not right now to sort of bring in petrol, electricity, and alcohol, particularly for states like Tamil Nadu under the GST umbrella. It's been 8 years, sir, and we still don't have a unified national market as far as GST is concerned.
What do you mean? I think we have it's certainly more common market than we had pre-GST, right? The borders are I'm told borders are smoother, less, being a thing. So yes, it's not a perfectly common market, but it's better than before. And the question is to move forward to make it even more common. Is there that underlying, trust and spirit of cooperative federalism or not? You can't force this if there isn't that underlying spirit.
GST has 2.0 has cut slabs and simplified rates. But for MSMEs, the real pain point is compliance, multiple filings, refund delays, and Inspector Raj, as you were talking about. Isn't this reform meaningless for them if administrative burden hasn't been fixed? Nirmala Sitharaman too had announced a lot of credit schemes and all that for MSMEs. But you're actually not talking about the ultimate problem, isn't it? The elephant in the room is not being addressed.
I think there are two sides to that. I think there's a side where all these compliance burdens being placed on SMEs. Yeah, I think that's one part, and I think there some effort has been made. I think maybe the bigger elephant in the room is the arbitrary enforcement, the coercive enforcement, the Inspector Raj, and both here, center and especially state tax administrations are both culpable here. And maybe this has worsened after GST. Maybe it's better. I don't know. But certainly the level of arbitrary enforcement and the inspector Raj that affects SMEs is a major issue, but that's something that you cannot do a policy change. It has to be something that all state governments, think more deeply about how do you, and this is a long-standing problem, right? I mean, we just don't seem to be able to, you know, have simple rules, simple enforcement, taking away the power of the Inspector Raj. I think that's a much bigger reform, and I think that all of us need to focus much more deeply on that. It's not a matter of changing some slabs and stuff. It is a serious problem. I agree with you, but I don't know what the solution to that is.